Warning: the following story contains descriptions of graphic violence. Viewer discretion is advised. When a pair of trail runners discovered the decomposing corpses of Carolyn Clark and Joanne Walters buried under sticks and leaves in Belangolo State Forest on September 19, 1992, it was only the beginning of what would eventually result in the capture of Australia's most famed serial killer. Over the next month, searchers would discover 5 more bodies stowed away in the woods of the park, ending the mystery of the disappearances of foot travelers in the area. The bodies discovered by the runners were identified as Clark and Walters, both of whom were British and traveling together on foot. They had last been seen over 5 months before. Soon the remains of hitchhikers James Gibson and Deborah Everlist, last seen near the forest in 1989, were found. Almost a month later, Simone Schmidl, a hitchhiker who disappeared in January of 1991, was discovered under the now familiar pile of brush. When a pair of jeans found near Schmidl's body were found to be the property of yet another missing person, the searching continued. Predictably, the jeans' owner, German Anja Habschild, and her boyfriend, Gabriel Neugbauer, were found nearby dead. The couple had been missing since December of 1991. Aside from the obvious similarities between the way all the victims had disappeared and been disposed of, their causes of death were a bit dissimilar. Clark had been stabbed and shot in the head several times. Gibson had been repeatedly stabbed. Everest had been slashed in the face in addition to her stab wounds. Schmidl had also been stabbed. Habschild was decapitated, and Neugebauer had been shot in the head 5 times with the same weapon that killed Walters. Ivan Milat was born on December 27, 1944, at Crown Street Women's Hospital in Guildford, New South Wales, the son of Croatian immigrant and laborer Stefan Marko Stephen Milat and Margaret Elizabeth Piddleson, an Australian national. Ivan was the 5th of their 14 children. The impoverished Milat family initially lived on a rural weatherboard cottage farm in Bossley Park, 36 kilometers west of Sydney, before relocating to Liverpool. By all accounts, Milat's parents were conscientious in raising, educating, and disciplining their children, and sent them all to Catholic schools. However, family members described Milat's father as having a temper due to his alcoholism. Many of the 10 Milat boys were well known to local police and were used to handling knives and firearms, spending their afternoons shooting at targets in their parents' yard. Siblings recalled Milat displaying antisocial and psychopathic behavior at a young age, such as attacking animals with machetes during their childhood, leading to a stint in residential school age at 13. By 17, he was in a juvenile detention center for theft, and at age 19, he was involved in a shop break-in. In 1964, he was sentenced to 18 months for breaking and entering, and a month after release, he was arrested for driving a stolen car and sentenced to 2 years hard labor. In September 1967, at age 22, he was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment for theft. On April 17, 1971, Milat abducted 2 young 18-year-old female hitchhikers near a Liverpool railway station with a knife. He raped one of the hitchhikers before they stopped at a petrol station cafe, where they managed to escape. Milat was arrested later that day and was charged with 1 count of rape and 2 counts of armed robbery. While awaiting trial, he was involved in a string of robberies with some of his brothers before faking his suicide by leaving his shoes at the Gap, a well-known Sydney suicide site. Authorities believe that Milat then fled to Queensland and Victoria before flying to New Zealand, where he lived for 2 years. However, Milat is suspected of having returned surreptitiously using a fake passport and lived interstate to avoid detection. He was rearrested in 1974 after his mother was taken to hospital suffering from a heart attack, but the robbery and kidnap cases against him failed at trial, with the help of Milat's family lawyer, John Marsden. Milat took on a job as a truck driver in 1975, and by the time of his arrest, he had worked on and off for the Railroads and Traffic Authority for 20 years. In 1977, Milat unsuccessfully attempted to rape and murder 2 women who were hitchhiking from Liverpool to Canberra. but he was never charged. By the time of the initial discoveries in the Belanglo State Forest, several backpackers had been reported missing. One case involved a young Victorian couple from Frankston, Deborah Everest, 19, and James Gibson, also 19, who had been missing since leaving Sydney for Confest near Albury on December 30th, 1989. Another related to Simone Schmidl, age 21, from Germany, who had been missing since leaving Sydney for Melbourne on the 20th of January, 1991. Similarly, a German couple, Gabriel Nijbauer, age 21, and Anya Habshid, age 20, had disappeared after leaving a King's Cross hostel for Mildura on the 26th of December, 1991. On September 19th, 1992, two runners discovered a concealed corpse while orienteering in Belanglo. The following morning, police discovered a second body 30 meters from the first. Police quickly confirmed via dental records that the bodies were those of Clark and Walters. Walters had been stabbed 15 times, 4 times in the chest, once in the back, and 9 times in the back, which could have paralyzed her. Clark had been shot 10 times in the head at the burial site, and police believe she had been used as target practice. After a thorough search of the forest, investigators ruled out the possibility of further discoveries. On October 5th, 1993, a local man searching for firewood discovered bones in a particularly remote section of Belanglo. He returned with police to the scene where the two bodies were quickly discovered and later identified as Gibson and Everest. Gibson's skeleton, found in a fetal position, showed 8 stab wounds. A large knife had cut through his upper spine, causing paralysis, and stab wounds to his back and chest would have punctured his heart and lungs. Everest had been savagely beaten. Her skull was fractured in 2 places. Her jaw was broken and there were knife marks on her forehead. She had been stabbed once in the back. The presence of Gibson's body in Belanglo puzzled investigators, as his camera had previously been discovered on December 31st, 1989, and his backpack later on March 13th, 1990, by the side of the road at Galston Gorge, over 120 kilometers to the north. On November 1st, 1993, a skeleton was found in a clearing along a fire trail in Belanglo during a police sweep. It was later identified as that of Schmidl and bore at least 8 stab wounds. 2 had severed her spine and others would have punctured her heart and lungs. Clothing found at the scene was not Schmidl's, but matched that of another missing backpacker, Habshid. The bodies of Habshid and Newberger were found on the nearby fire trail on the 4th of November 1993 in shallow graves 50 meters apart. Habshid had been decapitated, and despite an extensive search for her skull, it was never found. Nujbauer had been shot in the head 6 times. There was evidence that some of the victims did not die instantly from their injuries. Examination of the remains showed evidence that some of the victims had been tortured. In response, on October 14, 1993, Task Force Air containing more than 20 detectives and analysts was set up by the New South Wales Police. On November 5th, the New South Wales government increased the reward in relation to the killings to $500,000. After developing their profile of the killer, the police faced an enormous volume of data from numerous sources. Investigators applied link analysis technology, and as a result, the list of suspects was narrowed from a short list of 230 to an even shorter list of 32. Speculation arose that the crimes were the work of serial killers, given that most of the victims had been attacked while as pairs and had been killed in different ways and buried separately. On November 13th, police were contacted by Paul Onions, age 24, in the United Kingdom. A few years earlier, on January 25, 1990, Onions had been backpacking in Australia, and while hitchhiking from Liverpool Station towards Mildura, had accepted a ride south of Casula from a man only known as Bill. South of town, Minnegong, and less than 1 kilometer from Belanglo, Bill pulled out a revolver and some rope to rob Onions, at which point he managed to flee while Bill shot at him. Onions flagged down a passing motorist, Joanne Berry of Canberra, and together they described the assailant and his vehicle and registration number to the Borough police. On April 13th, 1994, detectives refound the note regarding Onion's call. His statement was corroborated by Barry, along with girlfriend of a man who worked with Milat. Milat was arrested at his house on the 22nd of May on robbery charges and weapons charges related to the Onion's attack, after 50 police officers surrounded the house. The search of the residence revealed various weapons, including a .22 caliber Anschutz model 1441 .42 rifle and parts of a .22 caliber Ruger rifle that matched the type used in the murders, a Browning pistol, and a Bowie knife. Also uncovered were items belonging to several of the victims. Homes belonging to Milat's mother and 5 of his brothers were also searched, uncovering several more items belonging to victims. Milat appeared in court on the 23rd of May, but he did not enter a plea. On May 31st, he was additionally charged with 7 backpacker murders. On June 28th, Milat sacked James Martson, his family lawyer, and sought legal aid to pay for his defense. Meanwhile, brothers Richard and Walter were tried in relation to weapons, drugs, and stolen items found on their properties. A committal hearing for Milat regarding the murders began on October 24th and lasted until the 12th of December, during which over 200 witnesses appeared. Based on the evidence at the beginning of February 1995, Milat was remanded in custody until June of that same year. Milat's trial opened at the Supreme Court of New South Wales in Sydney on March 26, 1996, and was prosecuted by Mark Tedeschi. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Milat is reported as having been confident he would be found innocent. In phone recordings made for the ABC's Australian Story program in 2004, Milat stated that his grounds for believing he would be found innocent at trial. Quote, "My basic defense in my trial was that it wasn't me. I don't know who did it. It was up to them to prove my guilt, not for me to prove my innocence." Unquote. His defense argued that, in spite of the evidence, there was no non-circumstantial proof Milat was guilty, and attempted to shift the blame to other members of his family, particularly Richard. 145 witnesses took the stand, including members of the Milat family, who endeavored to provide alibis. On June 18th, Milat gave evidence himself. On the 27th of July, 1996, after 18 weeks of testimony, a jury found Milat guilty of the murders. He was given a life sentence on each count without the possibility of parole. He was also convicted of the attempted murder, false imprisonment, and robbery of onions, for which he received 6 years imprisonment each. Australians Deborah Everest and James Gibson, both 19, left Melbourne. The couple first went to Sydney, where they stayed at the backpacker hostel in the inner city suburbs. After checking out, they were last seen heading for Confest, planning to hitchhike to Albury. A day after they were last seen, a bushwalker found Gibson's camera by the road at Galston Gorge in northern Sydney. The person took the damaged camera home and only reported it when Gibson's empty backpack was found in the same area a month later, and was linked to the couple's missing persons report. Both were found in the Belanglo State Forest on October 5, 1993, and had been stabbed repeatedly. German Simone Smidel, age 20, set off to hitchhike from Sydney. She told acquaintances that she was off to Melbourne to meet her mother, who was flying in from Germany to join her for a camping holiday. She was last seen at a train station preparing to leave for Western Sydney, where she was attempting to hitchhike. On the 1st of November 1993, Schmidl's body was found in Belanglo State Forest. She had died after suffering numerous stab wounds, one of which went through her spinal column. On the 26th of December 1991, German backpackers Gabriel Neubauer and Anja Hibschied, age 20, left the Backpackers Inn at King's Cross, Sydney, to hitchhike to Adelaide and Darwin. On November 4th, 1993, both were found in Belanglo State Forest, where it was determined that Neubauer had been bound and shot 6 times, while his partner Habschied had been beheaded. April 18th, 1992, British citizens Joanne Walters, age 22, and Carolyn Clark, age 21, left King's Cross to hitchhike together around Australia. They were headed for Victoria to pick fruit and made it to Bully Pass, near Wollongong, where they reportedly asked for directions to the Hume Highway. On September 19th, 1992, both were found in Belanglo State Forest. Walters had been stabbed and Clark had been shot into. On his first day at Maitland Gaol, Milat was beaten by another inmate. Almost a year later, on the 16th of May 1997, he made an escape attempt alongside convicted drug dealer, former Sydney councillor George Savis. The plan failed and Savis was found hung in his cell the next day. Milat was subsequently transferred to the maximum security section at Goulburn Correctional Center. In November 1997, Milat appealed against his convictions due to a breach of his common law right to legal representation, as established in Dietrich v. the Queen. However, the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal dismissed the appeal. In 2004, Milat filed an application with the High Court of Australia that he be allowed special leave to appeal on new grounds. The application for leave was ultimately dismissed, affirming the Court of Criminal Appeal's decision to disallow this initial appeal. On October 27, 2005, in New South Wales Supreme Court, Milat's final avenue of appeal was refused. In 2006, 2 other application attempts were rejected as well, as was one in November of 2011. In 2001, Milat was transferred to one of the 45 new units at High Risk Management Correction Center, Supermax, at Goulburn Correctional Center. In 2006, a toaster and television given to Milat in his cell caused a public outcry. In his 2004 interview on Australian Story, Milat denied that any of his family had been involved in the 7 murders. On January 26, 2009, Milat cut off his little finger with a plastic knife with the intention of mailing it to the High Court of Australia to force an appeal. He was taken to Goulburn Base Hospital under high security. However, on January 27th, Milat was returned to prison after doctors decided surgery was not possible. Milat had previously harmed himself in 2001 when he swallowed razor blades, staples, and other metal objects. In May 2011, he went on a 9-day hunger strike, losing 25 kilograms, in an unsuccessful attempt to be given a PlayStation. In May 2019, Milat was transferred to the Prince of Wales Hospital, Randwick, and was subsequently diagnosed with terminal esophageal cancer. Following his treatment, he was transferred to the Long Bay Correctional Center to continue his custodial sentences. On the 9th of August 2019, a terminally ill Milat was moved to a secure treatment unit located in the Prince of Wales Hospital following the loss of 20 kilograms in previous weeks. He was also exhibiting a high temperature. His status, however, was reported as not life-threatening. And on October 27, 2019, Milat died from esophagus and stomach cancer at 4:07 a.m. within the hospital wing at Long Bay Correctional Center. He was 74 years old. Prior to his death, Milat wrote a letter to his family requesting that his funeral would be paid for by the New South Wales government. The request was denied by New South Wales Corrections Minister Anthony Roberts. Instead, his body was cremated with the full reimbursement of costs to be paid from his prison account. In his final days, New South Wales police said in a statement that their officers visited Milat 8 times, in prison and in hospital, in an attempt to elicit a confession from him. However, Milat did not confess. Various strategies were deployed on each occasion, including different combinations of detectives and utilizing recorded interviews with victims' families as an investigative technique. The statement said, quote, "No further information was received or provided to police during the interactions. Although Milat died never having officially confessed, he is said to have previously admitted to his mother, with whom he had a close relationship, that he was responsible for the backpack murders." For more content, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you.